Hi, I, I'm Monica, and I thought tonight that I'd talk about and try to put this thread together of what my creative life has been for the last 40 years. So you could sort of see what I've been up to and how I've sort of managed my artistic life and where I've been. And it's really been based mostly on travel, which I knew at a very early age that was something that was going to be a big part of my life and a big inspiration for my work. And I mostly I've spent a lot of time in India and Mexico, and and Italy. And I spent time in those countries more because I think creatively they were just so stimulating with the different tribes and the different textiles and the way women worked. There was always something for me to really catch on to and really be stimulated by. But I started with this slide because with all the moving and changing of houses in my life, I don't know why I've held on to this piece. I did it when I was 15 years old, and I was really into embroidery and embellishment. It was the 70s. You remember, it was the time when all your clothes were, it's not like now where everything is so simple, but we embellished everything. And I put this also because it sort of comes full circle in what I'm doing now with my work. So I decided to go to the Art Institute of Chicago. I was accepted. And I should backtrack. My last year of high school, I decided to travel through Latin America. So that was really what stimulated me about being abroad and really wanted to travel a lot. So I came back after a year of traveling and was accepted to the Art Institute. And after a year, I got very antsy. So I wrote a proposal to the School of the Art Institute to allow me to go to school in Mexico and study textile. I was basically a painting major, but I was always leaning more towards textiles, so I sort of went back and forth, which I've probably done my whole life. So I found these images these were taken actually about 1978 when I visited Guatemala. And you know, when I look at these photos 40 years ago, there's so much a part of the work that I'm making now. And I was just so intrigued by these women and the way they made so much out of so little. They did backstrap weaving, they spun their own yarn. They lived in villages with, some of them didn't even have electricity. It was so simple. And they let me come and you could see this woman has a backstrap loom on her, and I learned how to weave with them. It was just an extraordinary experience. So now I'm going to jump way ahead. I took a lot of time off from making art, and in my 30s I decided to go back to art school, and I studied at the Florence Academy of Art in Florence, Italy, which was very academic. It was the old school 19th century where you learn how to see, retraining your eye. And I spent 6 months in a room drawing. These are cast drawings that I did out of charcoal. And learned how to study and just see differently. And I came back to Chicago and I knew I wanted to continue that. And I found a small atelier in Chicago, and I spent 4 years just learning how to draw and paint. You started out basically in black and white, and then when they felt that you understood value, color, then you moved on to bringing color in the work. But it was a really amazing training, and I'm very grateful for it, even though I don't paint like this right now, but it's just to have those tools was really something great. So when I got out of school, I went into the studio, and it also, what I want to also emphasize that the great thing about that training is that it really teaches you discipline, that you know when you are going to be an artist, you're going to go in that studio and you're going to work every day. And that's really what, it helped me really discipline myself to that kind of life. So I started doing portraits of mostly women because that's always been more of what I've been interested in talking about. Women cutting their hair, women, like the flaws women find in themselves, women feeling, feeling beautiful but feeling too fat and things not fitting them. I wanted to take formal portraits and sort of do a twist on them. And then I played around with taking the figure out of the painting and, ripped garments, things of imperfection. Oops, sorry. And I was still working from nature with a model sitting in front of me because that's really how I was trained. And I just continued really working like that for many years, practicing everything that I had learned in school. But again, I got a little antsy, and I was accepted to an artist in residency in India, which really changed my life. And I put this slide in. Oh wait, here's some more formal paintings. So you could see here I took the head completely out and just started focusing on here. That's when this all started to evolve. But this, this is something I found that I did many years ago, and it just brings me back to my interest in textiles. And it was a workshop I did in India with natural dyes, just using plants. And I mean, from all over, like Rajasthan and Gujarat and places, I had just been to and had never heard of plants or things like that. But it's directly related to painting, and it was very exciting to learn all that. So I came back from India after I think another 6 months, and I started thinking about putting pattern in the painting. This is a self-portrait that I did, and just approaching it in a less formal way. And I was also very intrigued by going to tribes in India where women, you just did not see their face. I mean, they were covered. And just seeing their eyes said so much, and I really wanted to talk about that in this work. So in these pieces, I've used a lot of paper that I found in India. I think it was made for astrology. I was just trying to pick up materials that were surrounding me, because I have found when I travel to some of these countries, it's very hard to get materials, good materials. We're so spoiled here. So I like to work with what I have. And it sort of pushes me to go beyond what I would normally do, which I always like. But I also have to say that I'm skipping around a little because that's how I work. After I started doing these, I started to really take things down and simplify things. And I started to looking back at just the hair and line. And these are more portraits. Sorry, I'm always a little behind. So this, I also have to say, the last time I did an artist talk, I did it in Spanish, and I don't even speak Spanish. So this is actually very easy, but that's why this is left over. This is actually, this is my first drawing. I wanted to take a piece, a feminine piece, and emphasize it and give it character without giving it so much importance, maybe, and I really wanted to explore line more. And so I just started drawing here, without the figure, without the face. And I spent, I don't know, maybe 5 years doing this, just altering shapes, playing with lines, really working with the expression of the line. And what was very interesting is my first exhibition of these drawings, the gallery director, this was at a beautiful gallery in Chicago called Nafta Schultz, came up to me and he goes, there's people who will not even go up to your drawings because they were so repulsed by them. And I was just blown away because that really was not my intention. And I never thought about the hair like that. I never really thought about what it could evoke in people. But it turned out to be, interesting for me because it gave people opportunity more to write about my work. You know, people always like to find the darkness in something, and that was what happened. Some of these drawings became very large, and for instance, this one I think is about 10 feet, and I don't have a big studio, so I really wanted you to feel more of that repulsion. You know, I wanted it to feel like so in your face. So I just kept on and on, doing a lot of these drawings, really playing around with it and really altering shapes and trying to really make it into something other than here. This is my studio, which just gives you an idea of the scale. And I'm telling you, working with 12 feet drawings is not easy, especially when you're alone. It's like they're always flying all over the place. And anyway.
Annika, are you, when you're doing these hair pieces, are you, is that from your imagination, or are you putting stuff on the wall to draw?
I start from nature when I work at them, so I work with hair, and I have a lot of it in my studio, and I pull it apart and I stretch it, and you know, so I am, but then I started to let go of looking so much and just let my mind create more, which I think when I started doing that, more things started to happen. I also had a big change in my life. I had a child, which always gives you a new perspective on life and takes up some time. So my daughter was actually a huge inspiration for me because she was just there all the time, flying around, jumping around, and her energy just amazed me. So I spent a lot of time using her as my subject because that's what was around me. And I do have to say that most of my work has been pretty personal until recently. Then I started taking photos because it was more of economy. I didn't really have that much time to be in the studio. And I brought her in the studio with me. So these are combinations of photos and drawings that I started to use. And what I was doing with her is really exploiting her in a way and just exaggerating her hair and her play. And it was funny, the first exhibition I had of these, she's only 3 in these photographs, and nobody could believe that because she was so good at just allowing me to work with her. After she got about 7, it was all over, but it was a good period that her and I had together. In fact, I think she'd probably be appalled that I was showing you these. But I exhibited these a lot with the drawings, and they worked well together, the relationship of the two. But I really, really think that I work better with my hands. So photography, it was a great tool to use when I needed it, but I wanted to go back to doing more laborious work. This she'd probably be pretty appalled. So, as I said, there's a lot of drawing involved in these, and when you look at them, you don't even really know where the photo begins and when the drawing ends. This was an exhibition, all these that I had, called The Wool Gatherer. Then I returned to India, and I started, I had a very specific purpose to go there. I was working on a project, and I decided to visit a temple called Tirupati in southern India. And it's a temple, I want to make sure I get this right, that devotees go there to pray to the gods, and in doing that, they get their hair shaved and give it to the temple, and hoping that their prayers will come true. and that's it. It's the most visited religious site in the world. About 140 million people go there a year. It's more than the Vatican. So I had to go there after working with hair for so long, and I was so excited to go into the place where it's tonsuring that they call it, and where they shave the heads, but they wouldn't let me take photos. So I pulled one off for you to see. It's just incredible with just mounds and mounds of hair around, and women with long, gorgeous black hair, whole families coming in, and then they have all their head shaves. It's an amazing experience. But what really, really stimulated me and really prompted this whole new body of work was going to the hair factory, where businessmen go to the temple and the temple auctions off the hair. There's like, I don't know, 50 million tons of hair. And the temple is so wealthy because these businessmen buy the hair, take them to the factories, and that's where the hair is sorted out, which is what the video is about in the show. The hair factory is just extraordinary. That women just sit there and they sort out strands of hair that's used to go into wigs. All the Hollywood women you see, even the blonde, it's all Indian hair. Everybody's wearing Indian hair. But anyway, so I did a series of photos, and this is also a drawing that was taken from the factory. It just was so exciting to be there. And like I said, a lot of this is drawing, and I just wanted to exaggerate the feel of and the abundance of what it felt like to be there with mounds of hair. It's like I'd never seen anything like it. So this is a series that I did. Here we're back at the hair factory. This is called, photos called Sort. So I really, like I had said before, decided that I didn't want to do photography, and I went back to doing the drawing again. And I don't know where I got this idea, but I was searching for a new way to look at a drawing, and I really felt like I needed to do something three-dimensional. But I'm very limited to my skills as far as drawing and painting go, so I got in my head that I was going to teach myself how to make sculpture out of my drawings. And I have to say, cutting up your drawings that you've worked on for many hours takes a lot. But I was happy to do it, and I was very excited by the results I was getting. I also taught myself origami, which is basically what this is. And like I said, I just wanted to see the sculptures. I wanted you to experience the drawings in a new way. So I brought, some of them are here. So basically what these are drawings that you're seeing in different forms. This was another exhibition I did called The Pollen Path, and in this I decided to continue with the hair drawings, and I had worked in black and white for so many years. I needed color in my life. And I was starting to look at how shapes played against the lines. So these are the beginning of a series of drawings I've done. This is all charcoal and paint. And it's really about opposition that I'm dealing with. I think in a lot of my work here of just some kind of tension there is in the work. And I think the play against the drawing and the paint create a new kind of tension that the drawings alone did not have. And where are we? Then I started again. This is probably 10-foot by 8-foot drawing, or I guess it's wider than that. I just started working very large again, which somehow suits my hands. This is another drawing that I have, and I think they've also started feeling somewhat like maps to me. And I think all the travel I've done and all the places and all the maps I've studied, and maps have always intrigued me. I think they've started to play into the work a bit. It's like connecting things. So 2 years ago, I moved to Mexico for a year, and I did not have a studio. And I had to, again, be resourceful like I did in India. And I decided I was going to start sewing, which is why I showed you the beginning slide. I was surrounded by all these women that come in from the local villages who are doing this amazing embroidery work. But what was really intriguing for me is they started to use, they didn't use it to sew, but they were using what's called henequen. I was in southern Mexico, and it's a plant, and this is what women do with this fiber. It's used to make clothing. I wish I had given you a photo of what it looks like, a big cactus. But I was taken out to these places that these women are working and dyeing the fiber. And this is a friend of mine who's a textile designer, and she is showing us what it looks like more in a raw form. And it just looks like hair to me. And I was trying ways of how I could incorporate this in the work. So this looks like the photos I took in 1976, right? It's like 40 years later, they're still using a bicycle wheel, a chair, nails. So the next body of work is what I started to make in Mexico. And what I did is I started to sew with the fiber. The great thing is about Mexico, it's a do-it-yourself culture. So although, like I said, they don't have great art materials, they have amazing materials to work with. You go to Miguel's, which I guess is like the version of Michael's here. And it is just like my daughter and I would just roam the like 4 floors of like, what can we make today? It was just, it was just so exciting. In fact, I was just thinking, because they had the Day of the Dead there, it's like nothing you've ever seen compared to, what it's like here in America. Just, the color is just so explosive. So again, that started entering into the work, and I started sewing the lines. And I was using local material that I can't even find here. Like I said, henequen, thread. I started using rice sacks that I could find. Anything that really sort of made sense at the moment. So this is where the work has sort of come to right now that I've been thinking about. And I also wanted to mention that I was listening to a podcast on the way here by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know, do any of you know who he is? And it's called Hallelujah, it's called Revisionist. And he was talking about artists, different types of artists. And he was comparing, he started by Elvis Costello, who's one of my favorite musicians, and how he took an album and it took him years and years and years, and Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen's song. And then he took Picasso and Cezanne and compared them. And the difference, and I bring this up because Picasso was famous, he was 20, he was quick, he knew what he wanted to make, and Cezanne worked very slow, and he worked on things over and over and over again. Like Leonard Cohen took like 8 years to write Hallelujah. And I could relate to that because I felt like that's how I am with my work. It's like I'm sort of never happy with it, but I'm always pushing it, and probably more so as I get older. I paint and then I rip the paintings out and then I redo. I mean, it's like they have to be at another level that I want them to be. And so it's taken me all these years to sort of get to this place that I could employ the things that I love most, which is textiles, paint, and try to make some interesting images that evoke something in people. So this is what I did mostly in Mexico and since I've been back. And trying to just make very interesting art that I hope people can connect to and appreciate. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Not one? Okay.
All those hair drawings you did you say you did those with charcoal?
The drawings,
Yeah, the hair, with the hair.
they're all just charcoal. And that was another thing. It was the simplicity of the material that I was using. I'd buy the Strathmore rolls, I'd buy vine charcoal, and I'd buy an eraser. And that was it.
How long generally does it take you to like make one of those drawings?
Oh, I got fast. I could make drawings fast. I mean, 2 or 3 days. And I just have to say, I've been subbing, teaching art at Shy Arts, and I taught a drawing class, and I've had years of drawing classes. So I said to the students, could you get me some vine charcoal? They said, oh, we don't have vine charcoal. I said, why not? Because our teacher doesn't allow us to use vine charcoal. And I could not figure that out. It's like such a great material, and it's so simple, and it's just, if you learn how to use it properly, it can really be wonderful to use. It's a little messy, but. Anybody else?
This isn't like a huge question, but you talked how you're like almost never happy with your work and you're always pushing it. So I guess in a sense I want to say, like, are you happy with your work right now, where it stands, and like what kind of future prospects you have of like pushing it, or where do you like see yourself going with this series?
Well, you know, it's funny because I think if you're happy, there's nothing to go in the studio for.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's
No,
like
sure.
you want to go in and get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, I just feel this incredible energy I have to make it right. I mean, I've really pushed it so far in the last couple years because I'm not sure what it is yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because here I am working with a whole new material that I don't really know what it's going to do yet. And I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think it's the problems that you create in the studio for yourself that makes it more interesting. So, hey,
Preach it, you bet.
right?
Yeah, so-
Yeah, you don't want to get it right because then you're just going to be bored and you don't want to go in there, right? So that's how I look at it. So where are they going to go? I'm not sure. I have an idea. I was making large pieces, and now I've gone back and made smaller ones. Like this piece is fairly large, and they started getting so unruly. Not like the drawings where I knew there was an end. But with these, they started getting so big that I had to really stop. And the sewing is so tedious. It's not like making, if I want to make a line with thread, it's, you know, I just go like that with charcoal, but with the thread, it takes me, you know, 5 minutes to make one line, you know. So it's a very tedious process. And also people keep talking about how meditative the sewing can be. And I really don't find it meditative. I'm very anxious when I sew, you know, because I just want to keep moving it. So I'm not meditating on it. Anybody else?
You talked about how you like traveling. Is there any like future travel destinations that you haven't gone to yet that you're really hoping on like going to?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I know, because I can't keep returning to the same place. I go to Mexico often. I haven't been to India in a while. I've been there many times. But I really want to go to Iran. I've never been to the Middle East. I'd like to see that. I've been to parts of Africa, but I think there's a lot as far as textile would be fascinating to go study. Yeah, so I still have a lot of travel in me. And I hope that most of you will travel, because it really is an extraordinary opportunity to really enhance your creative spirit, you know. And it's done wonders for my work, I have to say, and my life.
So if you haven't been brave enough to ask Monica a question right now, when we get to the reception, you can talk to her one-on-one. And she seems pretty friendly.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.